Okay, good morning, everyone. My name is Ryan Dividak. I'm the supervisor for the Planning, Zoning, and Land Use Unit within the Planning and Local Business Development Division in Oakland County. Welcome to today's Planners Gathering, Oakland County's Food Landscape Study and Southfield's Food Waste Pilot Program. Just a few reminders, the meeting is being recorded and will be made available on our website. If you have any questions, please use the chat function in Zoom and direct your questions to Jim Schaefer. Jim will moderate a question and answer session after the presentations have concluded. Today, we're joined by Amanda Woods, Public Health Educator, Oakland County Health and Human Services, and Stephanie Osborne, who's the Program Director for Make Food Not Waste. Before the presentations begin, I wanted to kind of set the stage. Oakland County is developing a materials management plan. In fact, all the counties in Michigan are developing a materials management plan. And essentially what we're trying to do is make the recycle bin larger than your trash can. Um, and the state has set some municipal solid waste recycling goals to increase by 30% by 2029 and 45% by 2030. And in terms of food waste reduction, we're looking to reduce total food loss and waste by 50% based on 2021 estimates. Now, the consultant we're working with, RRS, has provided some estimates for the amount of material that is recyclable and or compostable. And as you can see at the bottom, wasted food is the largest component of material that's going into the landfill. In fact, in 2024, estimates show that Oakland County sent over 180,000 tons of wasted food to Michigan landfills. So I wanted to kind of set the stage for those presentations. And so from that, Amanda, I'll turn it over to you. Thanks.
Good morning. Thank you, Ryan. Happy to be here today. Again, like Ryan said, I'm Amanda Woods. I'm a health educator for Oakland County Human Health and Human Services. So we kind of sit within the county, and so we oversee both our health division, neighborhood housing, and our children's village, just to kind of set some context leveling. Next slide, please. So I'm here to talk today about the food landscape study. So we conducted this study. It was launched in 2024 and concluded in late 2025. The project was funded through American Rescue Plan Act dollars, if you remember that, which allowed us to use these funds toward areas impacted by the COVID-19 pandemic. And so we were able to utilize these funds for food purposes. So we conducted both a landscape study, but we also some other food projects we supported were mini grants to support our area emergency food providers. And we also supported Fair Food Network. If you're familiar with that organization, it's actually a national group, but based here in Michigan. And they operate a program called Double Up Food Bucks, which allows essentially someone who is engaged in receiving SNAP benefits to double their dollars with a participating grocery vendor. So for this particular project, we contracted with public sector consultants to gather information about the food system specifically in Oakland County and to work with our area partners to better understand how that food system operates, especially how is it impacted by COVID-19. Regarding food access and food security. And we really asked them to come identify ways based on that community dialogue on ways we can improve access in Oakland County. Next slide. So what public sector consultants did was they convened this community coalition that participated on the project. And I just wanted to take a minute and thank all of our members who participated on that. This is the list of community organizations, but we did also have some community residents involved. Next slide. So the scope of the project, public sector consultant convening that community coalition, which would then really drive the process. They looked at publicly available data relating to food access and food costs, from both the census, Feeding America, and USDA data. They put out a primary survey collection with community members, and we heard from over 400 Oakland County residents. They interviewed food system partners, pantries, schools, and other food advocacy groups, and then also had one-on-one conversations with farmers and other food businesses, really to kind of understand the current landscape and help inform those goals and objectives as they move through the project. Next slide. So just some key findings. Like I said, today I'm going to present some key overview findings from the landscape report. Some of the formal larger report will be released later this calendar year. After I'm done presenting, I'll pop into the chat the link to a website where you can find some key one-pagers that are currently available right now. So next slide. So during our community survey, we found that nearly half of the survey respondents reported at some level of food insecurity. These are 6 different metrics you can see when it's talking about they couldn't afford enough to eat a balanced meal, the money didn't last, they were worried about it, they had to cut their meals size or had to skip meals. These are validated measures that the USDA uses to measure the level of food insecurity. Now, we recognize that possibly through our survey distribution, we may have overestimated the proportion of residents facing food insecurity. However, I think it's still really important in the light of this post like COVID-19 with inflation and rising food costs that I do feel like maybe we really need to pay heed to what these feelings and experiences that people are sharing during their survey. About a quarter of the survey respondents, when you look at all these measures combined, reported low food insecurity, and another quarter was very low food insecurity. So those folks that are reporting the very low meant they were skipping meals and maybe malnourished because of this. I will say that our secondary data collection also highlights the similar food insecurity rate. We often use, in the health world, we use something from Feeding America called Map the Meal Gap. This is a great tool. You can look at national, county, state level data. And based on a report in 2023, it estimated that 155,000 Oakland County residents alone did not have enough food for everyone at their home at all times. And I will say that this rate was equal or to the rate we experienced during the COVID-19 pandemic. Next slide. So I also want to highlight that when you look at that Feeding America data, that the Oakland County as a whole may have a lower rate of food insecurity, there are still communities within Oakland County that are experiencing higher rates of food insecurity compared to other groups. And both in our primary data collection and reviewing secondary collection, we consistently found that food insecurity rates among Black and African Americans and Latino Oakland County residents was higher than white and non-Hispanic Latino residents. Next slide, please. So kind of shifting, looking at from the demographic and food access, now we're shifting kind of towards this geographic aspect. And so kind of before I dive into this map a little bit, is I wanted to highlight the Health Division engaged in their community health assessment these past few years, and highlighted in green, they've identified these priority communities. During the assessment process, they really wanted to make sure they heard from these communities because of historical underrepresentation during the survey process. And so these communities were selected based on graduation rates, they were life expectancy, disability in the community, race and ethnicity, residents in the area with a veteran status, and residents who are identified as ALICE, which is asset limited, income constrained, but employed. And so what you'll find here is those communities are highlighted in green, and the orange communities that are highlighted are the ones that have low food access based on a half mile for urban or a 10-mile radius to a grocery store and do not have vehicle access. And I think you can see some overlap. And that quote from our survey really highlights how difficult it is for folks to find affordable, nutritious foods close to home and where they live. Next slide. So going back to that ALICE data. So ALICE again stands for Asset Limited Income Constrained and Employed. It's a United Way metric. And it really represents a growing number of families who are able to afford basic necessities such as housing, childcare, food, transportation, and healthcare. These workers are struggling to keep up their households and are still kind of working full-time plus. And so what United Way has done is they have mapped out different household costs depending on the composition. So that black line you see right there is the national cost of food for households. And in the orange, different bars are actually the percentage of the household food costs based on that household composition. And Oakland County, as you can see, consistently is higher than the national average. So, for example, for a senior, that estimated cost is $433. If you jump to two adults with two children, that is jumping to $1,447 of their food costs. So, just when you're thinking about your own food costs, thinking about that too in this context. Next slide. So this graphic really visualizes the feeling that many of our residents are feeling about the dramatic cost of rising of food. Feeding America estimated that pre-pandemic, the average meal cost in Oakland County was $3.20 per person. In 2022, that cost increased to $4.28, so nearly $1.08 per meal per person. And so if you kind of map that out, that is over $1,180 per person each year for food. And it really highlights the dramatic increase we are still seeing on the other side of the COVID-19 pandemic. The person really nails it on the head, right? All of us are figuring out how to be a mathematician, how to work the coupons. And this person really highlights they're having to choose between food and getting their children to school, and concerns about the affordability of life here in Oakland County. Next slide here. So on the other side of the spectrum, when we're talking about food costs, we know a large majority, like I said, a quarter of Oakland County residents are reporting some level of food insecurity. And so when we ask them about their experiences specifically with their emergency food providers, I highlighted here 24% are saying they're giving me too much of one type of food. And so when we're talking about food waste, if they're receiving 3 pounds of potatoes, like this individual says, and they're receiving it multiple times in a row, I mean, that's just a lot of potatoes, period. Like, how are you going to make, what are you going to do with all those potatoes? And they're really concerned about, they understand the value of the food, and now the food potentially might be wasted. Feedback during these community groups really highlighted how difficult it was and burdensome to kind of navigate the food system, share with family members to make sure food wasn't wasted. Next slide. So when we're talking about those rising food costs alongside rising food insecurity, all of us want to make sure that we're utilizing our food commodities so nothing is being wasted. It just makes good business and ethical sense. Stephanie is going to highlight this in a little bit when she presents, but back in 2023, Make Food Not Waste developed a blueprint for zero food waste in our region and found that if we were recovering some of that wasted food, now this is beyond Oakland County, this is kind of the southeastern area, but if we recovered that food that is getting wasted and going to the landfill, that value is $28 million. And I think, wow, that is how great could we recover that food and utilize it within our own food systems, right? But then there is this barrier. And this discussion participant really highlights it is a grassroots, ground level, logistical puzzle piece of how to make sure that food is getting redistributed and reorganized, and it's kind of self-built. There's no supportive structure to help it ongoing. It's volunteer based and often underfunded. Next slide. So, at the conclusion of presenting all of these key information and facts and figures to the Community Coalition, they went through a process and identified these three key goals that they felt would begin to address some of that data that I just presented to all of you. Improving access to nutritious, local, culturally appropriate food for Oakland County residents, reducing food waste and supporting local businesses, and increasing collaboration among food system partners. Next slide. So, what public sector consultants did is they reconvened that community coalition alongside some other partners to then flesh out what are those objectives that could help meet those goals. And I'm going to go into that in a little bit on specifically what one community group will be doing. But no, this is going to be a multi-pronged process. And so we need everyone's support and thinking about ways individually, us as residents, businesses, in our own organizations that maybe we're employed through, how we can address this food waste. So the Food Policy Council is one of, next slide. The Food Policy Council is one of those committee groups that is going to be taking a piece of this puzzle and working on improving it. Before I kind of dive into those next steps, I just want to highlight the Food Policy Council actually was launched back in 2027 in response to food access back then as well, being a priority issue for Oakland County Health Division. The council is comprised of social service agencies, schools, universities, emergency food providers, hospitals, nonprofits, and area residents, and is currently chaired by Tad Techner from Metro Food Rescue. Next slide. So actually what we did in our January full council meeting, we went through a prioritization process, reviewing the food landscape and kind of set these two immediate goals and objectives, these two objectives to meet the goal that has been laid out through the landscape. So one of the work groups is going to be developing a resource sharing mechanism between pantries and other food programs to share best practices on meeting both their client needs and organizational needs and making sure that food is not being wasted. And the other part is educating community members and food businesses on food donation laws and the economics, which again, I think is a really exciting opportunity that you'll hear a little bit more on. Stephanie's going to highlight what a specific community is going to be doing. So like I said, if you have any questions, I'm going to put into the chat shortly. The one pagers both for the food landscape that are found on the food policy website. But again, I think as we're thinking about this big picture and food waste, Stephanie is going to be taking us into what specifically Southfield in Oakland County is going to be doing, tackling food waste from their lens.
Great. Thank you, Amanda. And thank you everyone for being here, and Ryan and Jim for setting this up. My name is Stephanie Osborne. I am the program director at Make Food Not Waste for the Every Bit Counts initiative. And it's really, I'll just know, it's just really great to be back in a space with so many planners this morning. I am going to put in the chat our website. This page links to where all of our blueprints are located. I'll talk about Southfield most of the time today, but we do have 7 blueprints there for your reading enjoyment. Next slide, please. So before I get started, I just want to make sure we're all on the same page in terms of the terms I'll be using. So quickly run through these. Food waste is food that we just don't eat for whatever reason. It could be things that we're intending to eat, so we put it on our plate, but we got full. It could be things that we found in the back of our fridge and just had forgotten about, but they aren't good to eat anymore. It could be things that we never intended to eat, but are part of our food. So whether that be a peel or a pit, that's all encompassed in this term of food waste. We know that food waste can be prevented. Prevention's a huge strategy. It's really important. But we know that we can't prevent all the food waste that's going to occur in our community. So we have to also have ways to deal with the food that we're just not going to eat. And we do that through diversion to either a composting or a digestion facility typically. And what comes out of those facilities is the compost. So, compost is the decomposed organic material, such as when you take food waste and you decompose it. Next slide, please. So, this slide provides some unfortunately stark figures about food waste here in the US and in Michigan. In general, we can say we waste a lot of food, as you saw in those opening slides from Ryan, those slides that RS put together. A lot of our landfill waste is food, and that's really unfortunate because, again, as you heard about from Amanda, we have a lot of people in our community who are going hungry. So, unfortunately, hunger is not the only issue that is associated with food waste. Food waste is also a major driver of climate change. As food decomposes in the landfill, it creates methane, which is a greenhouse gas that has a much higher warming potential than carbon dioxide. I just want to note that this figure on the slide, the 1 pound of food per person per day, that spans across the entire food system, so from farm to plate. And it also emphasizes to me the importance of thinking through all pieces of our food system and the value that the food has as we put resources in along the whole chain. I also want to note that Michigan landfills met a lot of food, we landfill a lot in general, but we also landfill a lot of food. And this is not coming just from us here in Michigan, but we actually take in waste from other states and Canada due to our low tipping fees. So it's actually cheaper for communities to drive their waste all the way to Michigan and dump it here than it is for them to manage it themselves. So again, this is a bigger problem than just Michigan, but I think Michigan can really take a lead in it. So, excuse me, next slide, please. So for all these reasons, addressing food waste has been identified as a top solution to addressing climate change. And it's been seen as pulling the emergency brake on climate change. It's a really good solution because it's low tech. It doesn't take advanced technology. We have all the tools we need to do it. It's cheap, and actually it can save people money. I'll talk about that in a little bit. And it's something that is like pretty easy to understand and everyone can participate in. Next slide, please. There are many upstream benefits to preventing food waste in the first place, such as monetary savings, the potential to reduce food insecurity through donation and rescue, which Amanda touched on previously. And then again, using the resources as they were intended and not putting resources into all that goes into processing, producing, transporting, distributing our food. Those are pretty obvious to us. There are also many benefits of composting or diverting food waste from landfills. And since those are maybe less obvious to a lot of us, I've listed those here. So as you can see, diverting food scraps from landfills can help communities reach other goals and support health and well-being for residents. Next slide, please. In addition to the many benefits of addressing food waste, there's other good news to be shared, and that's that there's a lot of support and there's a lot of opportunity to turn food waste into something that's good. And that potential has been recognized by multiple levels of government, at the state level, at the national level, at the international level. And as Ryan mentioned earlier, the counties in Michigan are currently going through their materials management planning processes. And this is really exciting for us as an opportunity to move from just how are we going to manage the stuff that we don't want in our homes and in our businesses anymore, to how can we think about creating a more circular economy? How can we reduce our reliance on landfills? And again, through that process, the state has asked counties to plan for how they will manage organic waste, which includes food waste. The plans that are created at the county level will need to be approved by 2/3 of the municipalities in their county. So that's a lot of you on this call. And that lends an opportunity for you to be involved and provide input. Next slide, please. In addition to multi-level government interest in addressing food waste and support for doing so, and I will note the MMPs, there's financial funding for both the planning and for the implementation of the MMPs. So there is support out there for this work. But also food is everywhere. And so there are multiple ways for us to intervene, multiple ways and places. Again, over 1/3 of what we send to landfills in Michigan is organic material. So we don't have to look hard to find where this is, where it's coming from. And especially since only 1% of that is being recovered currently. And Southeast Michigan has a particularly great opportunity for food waste reduction, as a good chunk of the state's population lives here, and there's therefore a lot of food waste that happens here. Next slide, please. So this brings us to the Every Bit Counts initiative. This is the strategy that Make Food Not Waste has put forward to meet the state's very ambitious goal of cutting food waste in half by 2030. This strategy centers not just on reducing food waste. That's kind of squishy, right? What does it mean? How much am I doing enough? But instead kind of drawing a line in the sand and saying, we are going to completely eliminate food waste. So we have no food from these communities going to a landfill. So Make Food Not Waste identified that if the 15 most populated communities in Southeast Michigan eliminated food waste, we would be very, very close to meeting the state's goal. And so those communities are shown here in yellow on the map. Again, this focus on eliminating from these communities sends a really clear message. It's not a message of, or you don't have to guess if you did enough or if you got it, you know, if enough places are doing the right thing. It's just everyone everywhere is doing food waste diversion and prevention efforts. This geographical focus allows for infrastructure and service development, economies of scale. We can really leverage the work that's done in Southeast Michigan collectively through support from all the communities being involved in this program. And a very important piece of this idea is that through this really concentrated geographical effort, we could probably, hopefully, catalyze a culture where we value food, where it's something that we see having quite a bit of value all throughout the food processing chain, and create a culture where it's just not socially acceptable to waste it. And even if you don't want it, it goes into a system where it can be turned into something valuable for future growing, such as compost. So beyond these 15 communities, Make Food Not Waste was expecting that we would see some other communities in the area and throughout the state interested in this effort, in this initiative, and that they would also start to reduce their food waste. And I'll say, I think we're about 3 years into this project, and that is happening. We have many, many communities saying, how do I get on board with this? This is really something we want to be doing. So anyway, so back to the initiative. So we had to make a plan for how to actually make sure no food went to a landfill from any of these communities. And the City of Southfield was our first community that was willing to think this through with us. And I would like to give a shout out. I did see Suzanne Yusuf join today. So she's from the City of Southfield. She's been our point of contact, and I'm sure she would be happy to answer questions if anyone had any as well. Next slide, please. So how did the project work? The Department of Environment, Great Lakes and Energy, EGLE, funded Make Food Not Waste, who then hired the planning team at Giffords Webster to write a food waste elimination plan for the City of Southfield. So again, total elimination. How do we make sure no food is going to the landfill from anywhere in the community? And as far as we know, this was the first of its kind of this sort of plan. So it was a pilot and kind of a big undertaking. The plan was adopted this time last year and it is currently being implemented. Next slide, please. So, as all good planners know, you have to first understand what's currently going on in the community before you start to plan. So, we use the Natural Resource Defense Council's food waste calculator to estimate the amount of food that was in the city based on each sector. So, you can see on the diagram on the left that residents make up most of the food waste, which is pretty common. Usually, close to half of the food waste coming out of the community is all from residences. And if you think about that, that presents just a huge opportunity to improve food security. We can help households decrease their food costs despite the high food prices that Amanda cited from the landscape study, and just allow households to have more disposable income for other things that they need or want to do. The calculator also provides an estimate of the food that can be rescued under two scenarios, which you can see on the graph on the right. There is an ambitious potential scenario and a maximum potential scenario. And it's estimated that if all the surplus food in Southfield were donated, that would provide a value of $3.8 million, which could then help support those facing food insecurity. Next slide, please. So, knowing all these things, we brought together municipal supports, City of Southfield, various departments. We brought together RSAC and the schools, and we brought together some national experts in food waste. Next slide, please. Along with some local service providers, and we got everybody in the room to talk about all the ways we could tackle food waste. Next step, please. Next slide. So we held 3 convenings with all of our partners, and this allowed us to, again, bring everyone together and allow for collaboration. We had 3 kind of focus groups. One was focused on residents and kind of widespread education and awareness raising. The second was focused on food rescue, and the third on food food diversion. And so we held workshops for each of those groups where we tried to foster some blue sky thinking. We really tried to get people to step outside of their usual thinking about constraints and budgets, and say, no, think boldly, like really what could be, what would be ideal, how can we solve problems that you're currently seeing with this food waste initiative. And then we took all those brainstormed ideas and we thought through how we could make them viable, which ones were most viable, and what it would take to make those work. Next slide, please. We also conducted surveys for residents and businesses, and we gained some really exciting and promising feedback from residents in particular. Almost all of them, 86%, said that they would participate in a curbside food scrap collection program. And this was also so surprising. Almost half of those respondents said that they'd be willing to pay up to $20 a month for that service, which is quite a bit for that service. So really promising that there was support there. We also did interviews with food-based businesses. They were hard to get to complete a survey, but we did interview about 30 of them. And they were all very supportive and interested in the opportunities around compost collection and opportunities to donate surplus, but just felt like they needed some more resources, information, supports to do that. Interestingly, many of them noted that they saw a potential for benefits, not just financial and social, but also or environmental, not just financial, environmental, but also social, even in terms of having better staff engagement and pride in the staff's work. Next slide, please. So we used 2 frameworks to guide our strategies. We wanted to make sure that we had strategies that spanned the wasted food scale from the EPA. And we wanted to make sure that we really focused on prevention, where we're using food as it was intended, just to feed people. So again, we know that there's a lot of resources that go into creating food, and we didn't want those to go to waste. We also use the framework on the right here, the motivation, ability, opportunity, behavior change framework, to think about how to meet people where they are in terms of their awareness, skills, knowledge, tools, abilities, so that they could manage their food appropriately. Next slide. All right, so here it is. Here's the blueprint. Again, you can find it on Make Food Not Waste website. This plan really took planning tools and processes and applied it to the issue of food waste. So you'll see we have many components of plans that you're probably used to. Hopefully this feels comfortable for you. So we have our map. What is a plan without a map, right? So we have multiple maps in here, but this one shows food access in Southfield. Next slide, please. We also have a timeline. When we were thinking through these plans, trying to meet the 2030 goal, getting to 15 communities, we were really thinking, okay, what is feasible and but still within kind of that time frame. And so we were looking at a 3-year implementation. How could we roll all this out within 3 years? So we have a pretty detailed timeline here. The plan includes narrative text explaining what this could look like, should like, what we envision, how it would work, and pictures where possible. Next slide, please. Oh, my goodness. Excuse me. Can you skip that slide? Thank you. Here's our budget slide. And so here we had, again, a very detailed budget. We were trying to make sure that when funding became available, we were ready to hit the ground running. So I kind of jokingly say that, we have every pencil accounted for in here. Maybe not every pencil, but I hope that we're pretty darn close in our supplies and things, so we knew how much to ask for. And again, when funding came in, we could say, okay, this money needs to go for this supply or this piece of the plan. Next slide, please. All right. We also have some key performance indicators so we can measure progress during implementation of the plan. And we've provided support such as this model ordinance and just things to help get things going very quickly, again, once that funding became available. Next slide, please. So this has our kind of big numbers findings. So we found that if we were to prevent, share, and divert all the food waste in Southfield, there could be some significant financial gains. So for example, if residents ate the food that they bought, we estimate that the community could save $38 million a year. So that's money that's already in the community. This is not an infusion. So if you think about this as an economic development tool of just how do you increase discretionary income in households or make it so more people have what they need, 38 million every year, year after year is huge. Additionally, restaurants have opportunities to gain, and we know that they have such thin margins as it is. So here we've estimated that restaurants in Southfield could save about $1.5 million just by reducing their food waste. Again, we know that we can't prevent all of our food waste, so we calculated what the savings would be if we sent food scraps to be composted instead of to a landfill. And even if half of the food scraps were diverted from the landfill, there would be an estimated almost $2 million in savings in social costs. And that's the cost that's associated with health impacts, property impacts, and just impacts associated with emissions from decomposing land and food in a landfill. Next slide, please. So through this process, we learned that a lot of the infrastructure to do these sorts of projects already exists right here. There are haulers, there are sites with capacity to support diversion efforts, and there are supports available to scale up prevention and rescue efforts. Additionally, there's a lot of know-how and a lot of people willing to share their stories about what worked in other areas throughout the country. This is happening in other places, and there's a lot of tips and tricks to be learned. We did identify one kind of big gap, and that was really significant in Southfield because Southfield's housing, or the number of housing units, approximately half of them are multifamily units. And so this is tricky because they do not use the city's trash and recycling contract services. And so each of the units provides, or each of the apartment complexes has their own private contracts. So thinking through how to reach many different apartment complexes throughout the city, and getting another contract set up for them for diversion is something we're still working on and thinking through. Next slide, please. So I can tell you what's happening in Southfield now. So again, the plan was adopted this time last year. And since then, just recently, we've been able to launch a food scrap collection pilot. There are 7 locations throughout the city for residents to bring their food scraps. And residents interested in the program were able to get a compost caddy, biodegradable liners for the caddy, and information on what to compost. And then that information was shared through the usual city communication channels, press release, website, and outreach. And so this initiative will run for a year. We're also looking for additional funding to implement other pieces of the plan. Next slide, please. As I noted, this is one of 15 communities that Make Food Not Waste is targeting. And Southfield was the pilot plan. So we were fortunate that Eagle was very excited about the Southfield plan and its potential and funded the creation of plans for 5 more communities. Those are Canton, Dearborn, Farmington Hills, Livonia, and Westland. And they also funded a regional plan that includes those 5 communities and Southfield and helps or thinks through how those communities can all work together. Again, these plans are all available on Make Food Not Waste website, so you can check them out there. Additionally, Make Food Not Waste is working with various counties, including Oakland County, to make sure that they have robust food waste reduction goals in their materials management plans. And we're also working with all of the local communities to meet the MMP food waste goals through prevention, rescue, and diversion efforts. So if we don't know you yet, we want to know you. So please feel free to reach out so we can connect on that. And next slide, please. So some takeaways for you as planners here in Oakland County. Again, our website has lots of resources for municipalities, for residents, for businesses. You're also welcome to check out the blueprints and all the resources that are available there. Those are all for your use. We also facilitate a statewide coalition that anyone is welcome to join, and that sign up information is on our website. Definitely get involved in Oakland County's MMP planning process. It's underway, it's happening, and it'll be coming to your community. So being at least aware of what the discussions are may be helpful to you. And we're happy to think through what your community can do to be ready to reach your MMP goals or just your own goals around food waste. And so we've put together a short reference sheet, which I see Jim has posted in the chat. Those are some of the things we think municipalities could be thinking about doing in their scope of influence. And we're happy to support on any and all of that, whether that be something for residents, raising awareness, education, starting to plan for a diversion program, what that could look like in your community, whether you want us to reach out to businesses and help them set up with some technical assistance. You name it, we're happy to help if it's related to food waste. Next slide, please. So that brings us to the end. Thank you for your time, and I'll turn it back over to Ryan.
Okay, I'll take the baton. Thank you, Stephanie and Amanda. Excellent presentations. We do have a couple of questions for you. First, how has the report or presentation that Amanda is sharing been conveyed to individual municipalities, and how can we get a copy?
Yeah, so great question. It is still in the works. We are finalizing and putting all those pretty touches on it. Once that is done, it'll be communicated in a couple different platforms. One, I'm aiming that we'll do a press release, so it'll be announced that way, and hopefully I can make sure Jim gets a copy of that and distributing through this channel. It will be housed online as well through that link I sent you once it's finalized. The full report will be available on that same website, but right now there are those little teasers with those 3 one-pagers I included.
Okay, I just resent that link for
Thank
folks.
you.
Secondly, is there going to be a push within Southfield to encourage participants in other food waste reduction programs like Too Good to Go and Flash Food?
Great question. Yes, that's part of the plan. I think the timeline is yet to be fully determined, but we are working to put that piece in place in Southfield. And
Okay.
both are great tools that any community could share with their businesses, their food-based businesses.
Okay. And just as a reminder, if you have any questions, zip them to me in the chat. Next question is, are there any groups or organizations out there that you could highlight are doing it right in terms of coordinating with the gathering of food for distribution to food pantries and the like?
Stephanie, do you want me to take that one?
Sure, I'll add something if I haven't.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I think it's a very nuanced process, and I think it's very difficult and time intensive to set up this process. So it, it's it's there's not as many players as we'd hope to, and it's also very volunteer based. There's a couple organizations that are involved that kind of are the ones that are driving the trucks around, collecting from the different organizations. So Forgotten Harvest is one of the major partners, and they drive their trucks around to grocery stores and area businesses. And then Metro Food Rescue also is doing that, and they've actually expanded their reach, and they're actually kind of going down the food chain and are really looking at the wholesale produce that's coming in as well. So before it even hits the shelves, and looking at those items that are getting rejected because of it was labeled wrong or wrapped wrong or one thing is off in the pallet. And so they're working on redistributing within the system. I know we're also, Stephanie, you might be plugging this, but we're also like encouraging folks to consider how within their own agencies they can donate food, maybe rethinking how much their food and ordering for catering events, for example, because these agencies, they cannot come to get like a couple loaves of bread. Like it's just, and I think that's the logistical issue we're running into. And so it's kind of a two-pronged approach. People also need to be mindful of how much they're ordering and what they're doing within their own operations.
Okay, Stephanie, go ahead.
I think Amanda covered it pretty well. Prevention's the first move. And so yeah, thinking through how much do you really need, and if you do have something extra, can you share it locally, like within your own networks? I think that's really important because the food rescue crews, there's a lot of food to be picked up, but yes, it doesn't make sense for them to come and pick up just a couple loaves of bread. But that food may still go to waste because a couple loaves of bread in a household or in an office is still too much. So I think, I think Amanda named the key players, but everyone really has a role to play, I guess is what I'm trying to underscore. And that this is, it's going to take a group effort, and everyone eats, and there's again so many ways we interact with food, and just being creative within your own circles about where the surplus can go is really helpful.
Okay. Next question. Are there school districts or coordination with school districts to address the amount of food waste in the K-12 world? And if you could highlight any that are doing it right or anything like that.
Go ahead, Amanda, and then I can jump in with others.
Yeah, I mean, it's all school-based dependent. There's like my green school, Michigan school. So like from a personal parent perspective, I'm in Berkeley School District, and it's school by school. And I know my daughter's school is engaged, so they have the older kids kind of going around gleaning the unopened items. They've purchased a fridge so that those items can then go into the fridge for after school snacks for anyone that's forgotten it. But I know this is like a statewide initiative. Stephanie, I don't know, you probably have more details with your work as well.
Yeah, so I can say Make Food Not Waste is working with Eagle and the Michigan Department of Education to think through some solutions to this. School food is so tricky. It's so regulated. So we are working on some toolkits and um, some strategies to bring to schools. To more directly answer the question, some examples of schools who have found ways to break through. I think Berkeley is a good example. Locally, Royal Oak has a diversion program, and that's been successful. There's a school, Hamilton Elementary, in that's part of Plymouth Canton schools, and or sorry, Westland schools, and we're in conversation with them right now about doing a food waste audit and doing some behind the scenes work to help ensure that the food that they're putting out is something kids want to eat. I mean, that's first and foremost the point of the school food program. And so working with them to support students and in their educational goals in that way, and then working towards some diversion efforts. And we do have another grant in with Plymouth Canton schools, and that would be a more holistic look with lots of education, kind of farm to table look, taking kids to the farm, and then composting in the cafeteria so they can see how all of this is connected.
Okay. And looks like the last question is the health department reviewing any of the requirements or standards for things like canned foods that are nearing or past expiration dates. Looks like this is from personal experience that there's been issues where food's being thrown out and it may be close or at expiration.
Um, I cannot speak to that specifically, so I can follow up with our food sanitarians to see if that is under review. Um, I know it's like there are food safety laws that do allow businesses, if they're donating food that they deem and believe is safe to consume, they're protected under that law. Um, if it's close to expiration. Um, but specifically how the health division is getting involved, I'll have to follow up on that one.
Okay, and we just did get another, and this is a comment. If possible, note that My Green Michigan, which is a private food waste collection and composting company, is also working with school districts to reduce compost food waste. So I
Great.
think that's for the good of the order. That's the end of the questions. So Ryan, turn it back over to you.
Yes, thank you. Thank you both, Amanda and Stephanie, for joining us today in your presentations. Great job. I also want to thank all of you for joining us as well, and I look forward to seeing you next month at the next planners gathering on March 19th, which is titled Planning Discussions and Public Hearings from Conflict to Meaningful Engagement. So again, thank you for joining us today. Have a wonderful day.
Stephanie and Amanda.